Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our collaborative visual poetry professional learning series. We had a great time getting some of the background from our guest presenter, Donnie Welch, last week. We had some really great conversations and some good insight, again, like I said, into the foundations of this. And then today, I'm really excited that we're going to do some hands-on work. This is going to be super exciting, and we're going to kind of experience that idea of collaborative visual poetry as a group. So just a reminder to everybody, I'm recording this session. At the end of this session, I will be sending you all a link to receive your professional development certificate for contact hours from the Department of Education. I'm not going to put that in the chat, though. I'm going to end up emailing that to everybody because I don't want people to take the certificate and not actually have watched the videos of the sessions. So I will send that to you as an email separate from everything. As always, if you find that we're in the middle of something and you want to ask a quick question before you forget, you can always pop it in the chat. We can check that on a regular basis. I would encourage you to have your camera on if you could, just so that we can have some facial interaction if you're willing to do that. But some people at this point, you're distracted with some other things, or you're in a position where you don't want to do that. That's totally, I get that as well. And so I'm really excited for us to conclude this. Donnie, this is our 4th session with you over 2 series, and this is kind of the conclusion of the whole thing, but it's been a really great pleasure and an honor to have you here to work with us. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Donnie. Let's make some collaborative visual poetry.
Woo, let's do it. All right, y'all. It's good to see everyone again. So to get started, we'll start with a quick hello. So you can snap or clap or stomp your feet or pet your dog or rock in your seat. We'll sing hello, everybody. We're glad you came today. 2 times through in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. We're glad you came today. Yeah, one more time. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. We're glad you came today. Hey, thank you all. So let's get going.
Which camera are you trying to share your screen, Donnie, or are you trying to use your other camera? Oh, Donnie's frozen.
What's it?
Oh, you were frozen for a minute. Is everything working now on your end? Is Donnie frozen for other people too? Okay, good. It's not just. I thought it could have been my connection.
Yeah, I guess it's mine. My computer.
Being a little bit stubborn. Oh, we got a little echo too. Do you want to log out, Donnie, and I'll let you back in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do that. I'm going to pause the recording here just a minute, everybody.
All right. Maybe I won't use that second camera. Thank you all for hanging through that.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right. Everyone can see the PowerPoint good now? The intro slide. Hey, there it is. We're working through it. All right, y'all. Thank you for that. Thank you all for coming back, making the time again for yourselves, for your students. I really appreciate it. I was talking to Jason. I know spring break is around the corner, so I appreciate you all hanging through professional development with that looming over. So I did these introductions last time, but again, this is all about me, teaching artist from Manhattan. Won't belabor that. The housekeeping, it's the same as well. Jason mentioned, feel free to use the chat. Feel free to shout it out. I am, and I'll give these to Jason email out, some Google Drive resources I prepared for you. You'll see there should be 2 folders, session 1, session 2, and then these slides at the end, when we have our finished visual poem, I'll upload these slides into the session 2 folder as well. So objectives for today are a bit different than the last time. We're gonna actually look at some visual poetry, give you some like hard academic definitions of it, so to speak, and then a softer one that I developed for the classroom. Um, you'll learn how to create a lesson plan around visual poetry. We'll look at two of mine, and then we'll walk through the one that we do together. And by the end of that, you all should have a sense of what it is that I put into these. And then throughout my work, as I mentioned, is primarily with disabled youth. So we'll be talking about strategies for inclusion, and most of my lesson plans will just include that. Anywho, again, thinking about this visual arts standard, creative problem solving, and thinking especially of creative social problem solving. And I hope you all will take a stab at some poems with your students for National Poetry Month. Quick review. So these are my 3 keys to the collaborative piece, right? Fun, rhythm, and affect. So today, these are, I call them 3 steps. They're also kind of keys. But in putting lesson plans together, what I start with, I want to find a single word or concept that I can build off of. I want to connect that word to lived experiences. Then I want to celebrate. Those are sort of the 3 big anchor points to the lessons that I create around these. And as we work through the model ones and as we work through our own, we can talk and hopefully break these down a bit. But before we do, I want to just open the floor. I know last week was a lot of kind of big picture stuff, but did anyone try anything new based on maybe what we heard? Did anyone try starting a poem? Maybe not necessarily a visual poem, but yeah, or did you maybe approach a project differently, thinking about some of that sensory work?
In the pot or on the plate?
Plate. Hi, sorry, I'm answering a question. My husband's
Sounds like an important one.
Borscht. I didn't try anything new this week in the classroom, but I came away from the last workshop with an idea to use, we do a biennial literary and arts journal.
Oh, word.
And I thought, you know, I give credit to the kids that work on the editorial team of putting it together, which is usually just a list of their names. And I thought, I'm sure that I could find a way that we make a page that's a visual poem that either their artwork or, you know, something, and then would have their names, but would be like a bigger deal thing for them to take credit.
Yeah, I love that.
So that won't happen until May, but I've got it worked out in my head.
Nice. I use clapping and counting. Yeah, Kathy, very cool. I love that. Love to hear that clapping's going on. Anyone else? Try anything? Oh, let's see. Students use Giphy. Yeah, Giphy to represent their research project for our writing celebration. Yeah, Kristen. Amazing. How is that? Yeah, good. Cool. Got a thumbs up. Love that. Love bringing Giphy into these spaces. Anyone else try anything? Approach something a little differently? No. Oh. Children's theater class, high schoolers learning. This is Kaylee. About children's theater programming lesson plans. I had my students write a poem or a song to synthesize what they've learned about big picture. Yeah, children's theater concepts. I love that. Absolutely. I would be very curious to hear some of those songs too. I feel like they're probably pretty great. High schoolers singing about children's theater. Sounds wild. Cool, y'all. I'm gonna keep us moving. We got a lot to cover, but if anyone does have anything they want to shout out, just feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll keep an eye there. So I want to run through this poem. I'll give it a read, keep that little beat. We can see everyone's gifts again. I know there were a few. Lee, I got yours in there, don't worry. So I'm just gonna give it a read, and you can snap or clap along with me. We'll read all together in 3, 2, 1. It goes. All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. We know Donnie loves reading. Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports. Julian's cat loves meowing along. We know Paula's into nature. Jason loves tunes. Lexi loves painting. Oh, I missed it. Woo. And Marie is learning German. Ruth loves crafting. Kaylee drinks coffee all day long. We know Jean likes dancing. We know Kathy loves creative teaching. We know Tanya loves baking. That's what we got. I lost it there a bit, y'all. I'm still getting caught up in my technical difficulties. Thank you all for hanging with me, refreshing our gifts a bit, getting those visuals down. So this is the start of our visual poem. We put in the collaborative work. We found kind of our first images, and these are the images that we're going to play with and build on and kind of abstract around today. So let's talk about what visual poetry actually is. So visual poetry is a pretty broad term, but this definition from Jeff Huff is one that I like. He himself is a visual poet. And so this is from an article he wrote for the Poetry Foundation, which is linked in those Google resources I shared, and that will be shared out again. But visual poetry is written for the eye, but its methods and intentions, even in those works most limited in their verbal content, are always poetic, always compelling the reader forward into the transformative power of language. Right? And it's this last point that I find especially compelling, this idea of compelling the reader forward into the transformative power of language. So looking at these two pieces, also taken from the Poetry Foundation, I think on the left here, Labile by Michael Pensinski is a particularly nice piece. I'd love to hear some thoughts on it, but I'll say my observation first, kind of get us started with why this one in particular connects to this quote for me. Up here in the corner, the first time I put this together, the first time I saw this, I could have sworn that this said poetry, right? And then upon closer inspection, I realized, wait, that doesn't say poetry. That's like Poyfoy, maybe. And then as you start reading, the letters get more and more obscured, right? They become like less alphabetical English, more just kind of squiggles. And so I love this idea in this piece, this kind of trick of the eye of like this building towards language, this desire towards language, and then it's still just kind of fun. It's something that really particularly engages me. What else do we notice about this piece?
I think that the dots, it almost becomes arms for me. Like it's
Ooh.
gathering all those words.
Love that. These three, the black dots here, the black and blue dots.
No, I was actually thinking of the the yellow.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, those dots seem like black
Arms.
holes to me, but the yellow kind of seems like it's corralling those, because it's different. They're bigger and stronger outside, and those ones in between look a little compressed.
I love that. Yeah. I always think of those as headphones, but I love them as arms. Use as symbols. Yeah, Ruth, absolutely. There's a lot of symbology in here. I think of them too, headphones, a music note, perhaps. That symbology is kind of like the language coming apart, coming unraveled.
And I have to wonder about the strategic placement of the three big black dots. Why are they where they are, and what's interacting around them? I mean, like you described earlier, Donnie, the idea that the traditional letter symbol becomes more of a doodle the further away you get from the corners, and so it's just interesting that they are spread out proportionately where they are. They're not proportionally spread out. That's kind of the interesting thing about it, I think.
Yeah, I would very much agree. I love too the idea of them as black holes. I think, Lisa, because there's this idea of them like sucking the language in, right? Sucking the words in. The yellow arc also reminds me of two connected eighth notes. Yeah, our headphones feels very musical and fluid. Absolutely, Kaylee. Tanya checked in with, it would be fun to examine it with each side as the top. Ooh, like spin it around. I like that a lot, Tanya. Yeah. Illustrative. Kathy said, yeah, there's something particularly illustrative about this piece, especially black dots as head, people of different ages. Yeah. Jillian, I love that as well. I love this concept of illustrative too, especially in comparison. On the right here is a piece called Vortex Teak. And my bar got in the way, but it's by K.S. Ernest and Shayla E. Murphy. Hopefully you all can read the attribution. And this is very much more like digital art piece, right? Something made in a program like Illustrator or Photoshop and layered in, whereas this on the left here, I feel is much more illustrative. And I love the single use of the word here, right? We have vortex in the center, thinking again about this compelling the reader forward into the transformative power of language. And the artwork around it, for me, really complements this idea of the vortex, right? You have the center is this really dense purple, and leading into that purple, you have these little purple strips. Then from the outside, you have this brighter green, or this brighter orange, excuse me, which goes to green, which goes to blue, which goes to purple. And there's this kind of collapsing towards the word that really emphasizes the word itself. And so when we think about visual poetry, something that really stands out to me, it's a pretty fine line between what's a visual poem and what's just a piece of visual art. I think there's something very subjective there. But to me, this is a pretty subjective answer, but to me, when I think of it, it is that power of the word, right? Like when you look at, or when I look at a piece of art, I might feel a particular sensation, right? I might look at something that's particularly dark and gloomy and get this feeling of like loneliness from it. When I look at a visual poem, something that I'm trying to do, at least in my mind, the kind of mental gymnastics happening are connecting to a word, right? So instead of that feeling of loneliness, I'm trying to look at this piece and process the idea of loneliness, if that makes sense, right? Like loneliness as a definition. In the example, Vortex Teak, to me, reads a little manic, more than lonely. But I want to look at one more altogether that I think highlights this idea a bit more succinctly. This is haiku number 62 by a poet named Scott Helms. And I want to hear from y'all before I show you Jeff's reading of it. I think Jeff Huff, his kind of analysis is one that I agree with. But how do we read this? How do we see this as a haiku?
Well, we've got 3 lines.
Mm-hmm.
So that reminds me of a haiku. And then it's very sparse. And it's so interesting to have all those words cut up, because my brain immediately wants to replace all the parts that aren't there. So I'm making it into something I can read, even though it isn't something I can read.
Yeah. What else feels haiku-ish about this?
Maybe a little bird-like. I don't know. I'm starting to see little birds happening in it.
I love that. Yeah. I see birds too, or wings. Something happening there. Something kind of flighty. Looks like calligraphy. I love that, Kathy. Yeah. There's something about, I think what Lee and I are noticing is kind of the flighty wing pattern, but there's something kind of curvy and wonderful happening there that might look like calligraphy or similar to ink painting, like some haiku folks worked with. Haiku masters were also masters of that work.
I've been trying to count out the different syllables of just what is visible, and it kind of looks like 575, but
I love it. Yeah, I was wondering if anyone would do that. I tried too when I was putting this together for y'all. I was like, I never tried counting these before. Let me see if I can do it. I didn't get through too much of it. I decided to give up on that idea, but I applaud your determination there. It was pretty close to it, you think, Julian? Close-ish.
Yeah, except for the first line, there's just, I feel like there's too many.
Yeah.
To fit into the 5. Yeah.
Yeah, they look like continents or countries. I love that, Kristen. And then Kaylee, something about how my eye is drawn across the lines feels rhythmic. That mirrors the syllables used in haiku. Yeah, absolutely. I love that observation, Kaylee. I think you all really get into the core of this. So let's check in with our friend Jeff. So Jeff says that Scott Helms, his poems are created from scraps of colored text torn out of glossy magazines and arrayed in 3 tiers. So this is how Helms works, kind of like found poems, which I remember from last time some folks were doing in their spaces. So these tiers approximate the look of haiku, which we caught on to. And the text flutters in and out of different colors and typefaces, giving the poems their ineffable beauty, which I think is something that we caught on to as well, this idea of the calligraphy, this idea of the rhythmic flow, negative space, the same as positive, yeah. And what I like about this as kind of a teaching example is that this use, like the way Helms here uses haiku, is sort of the way I think about visual poetry, right? So we're creating something really pretty artistic, pretty beautiful, frankly, with 3 lines. But right now, we're not super concerned about language, right? We're more concerned with the themes that work in haiku, right? The structure of a haiku, how it might look on a page, and how we can play with that. So working with emerging readers, working with struggling readers, working really across the board with students, this feels like a really nice entryway into the form of haiku, right? Instead of counting syllables, instead of working with words, starting here and just playing with the structure of a haiku, right? And by structure, quite literally, how it's built, using visual art as this kind of scaffolding tool to start there before we even enter into language. And absolutely, there are syllables in the magazine, there's words at work here, but it's more about the structure, more about the form, and how the form moves across the page. And so that's really one of my first little anchor points, is thinking about that one word or concept, right? So here is Scott Helms, his one word, so to speak, could be haiku. Whoop. If we look back, we have the one word labile, which, as I say, I think I'm saying it incorrectly. So if I am, someone please point it out to me. And then our one word here, right, we have vortextique, and we have the centered word here, vortex. So all of these pieces are working on these abstractions of a single word, a single concept or form. And that's one way that I like to approach bringing visual poems into a classroom. So this is my definition, loosely based for the classroom space, of a visual poem, which is poetry utilizing visual art and sensory play to honor various forms of communication and self-expression. And these are 2 finished visual poems we're going to look at a bit more closely as we get into the first of our case studies. So those 2 poems were from work that I did with Miami, which is an organization I work with. They're one of the national partners I have outside of the city. And so this was a visual poetry project with multiply disabled youth. It was in a self-contained education center, and it was for the festival that Miami puts on. And I was working across the school, across the education center. So I was working with their kind of kindergarten, 2nd grade group classrooms, all the way up to their transition students. Miami, their mission broadly is to amplify all the voices in Miami. They work as kind of a civic publishing project, as much of it's a poetry foundation. And so that's their goal. And so the theme, the single concept of this was Miami. I wanted to go down and I pitched them on looking at the city itself and the neighborhoods of the students. And this was a visual poem project completed over the course of a week. So along with ours, which will be completed over the course of 2 days, I wanted to show you this, which is maybe a bit more practical, right? This is a week-long lesson, thinking about this idea of a process. And then the last one we'll look at is one that took a full semester, and we'll kind of think about that full semester arc. But this was in conjunction with my colleague Raquel, who you saw last time. We're going to look at that affect picture again. And so the 2 of us put this on over a week. As we look through this case study together, these are those 4 aspects of language acquisition, right? This idea of joint attention, of sharing attention in a space, the communication partner or partners, use positive affect, that intentionality, and moments of role reversal or imitation or opportunities for students to really take that leadership over their own learning. So these are just things kind of keep in the back of our heads. So the first thing I did in the workshop was much the same as what we did last time, right? I just worked on this idea of collaboration, being in a space together, and I taught just loosely around Invitation, which is a poem I opened our workshop with last time. It's a Shel Silverstein piece, one of my favorites. I think it just does a nice job kind of setting some ground rules without really being rules, right? Everyone's invited, everyone's welcome, and this is an invitation. And then the first day of doing the actual sensory work, the actual visual poetry work, we started with ocean handprints. And so we talked a bit about this picture before, but thinking about it now in the context of the visual poetry lesson, I wanted to start big to small, right? I wanted to work in that order. The ocean is this really dominant feature in the Miami landscape, something students will be able to observe from the buses, observe from their homes. It's really undeniable, inescapable in terms of the feature. And so we started with this rhythmic painting around the table. You can see here, this student, this poet, has their hand painted. So to kind of mimic that sense of water, that sense of like washing over, we offered each poet the opportunity to have their hand painted with a paintbrush to imitate that kind of swishy feeling of the ocean. If poets were particularly tactile averse, could wear a glove, or of course, if need be, could just paint with a brush. But we wanted to give that sensation, right? In this context, like water play might have been cool, doing something there. But water and poster paper rarely mix. So we had to kind of brainstorm and block bust around a similar way to create that sensation. Once everyone had their hands painted, we started just tapping, and the poster would make its way around the table, right? So we might have had like a little song, something like tap, tap, tap that paper, tap, tap, tap the ocean, right? Playing with it, but keeping that sense of rhythm, just to hold that attention and working on getting this first big piece of our landscape, big piece of our theme around the whole poster. So everyone's hands made this big circle as we worked around the table. And then we adapted as needed. We talked a bit last week about the way we adapted for this poet in particular, bringing the poster to him when it was his turn and having Raquel really anchor and work with her affect to match his own and keep him in the session. And for the next part, we went from the ocean, so we were going to the beach next. And this was the poem that we worked with, hopefully. And no more technical difficulties. You're all with me on poets.org, right? The link through, cool. So this is an E. Cummings poem called Maggie, Amelia, Molly, and May. It's just, I don't know, it's just a weird blast of a poem that has a really sweet ending. So I'll give this a read for us. So I did it with a little rhythm, and it's Maggie, and Millie, and Molly, and May went down to the beach to play one day, and Maggie discovered a shell that sang so sweetly she couldn't remember her troubles, and Millie befriended a stranded star whose rays 5 languid fingers were, and Molly was chased by a horrible thing which raced sideways while blowing bubbles, and May came home with a smooth round stone as small as a world and as large as a loan. For whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find in the sea. All right, and so this was our opening for our beach day. I like it a lot. There's a lot of wonderful imagery happening, right? Which we'll connect to in this next part. But I also really love this ending. And I think it encapsulated the work that we had just done, right? For whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find in the sea. And this idea of it's always ourselves we find in the sea kind of is a nice nod, a nice acknowledgement to the work we did as a whole group around that ocean work. So after reading that, we had a beach day. So we brought in a bunch of sensory materials to explore. We put them in this box. There's sand, there's shells. We also actually brought bubbles for students who didn't want to touch anything. So that way there would be bubbles both in the air for like that visual feedback. Maybe they'd be more open to touching bubbles and touching something like hard or coarse. And the box also was nice in that it became kind of multi-sensory, right? Thinking again about individual differences here. This poet here in the back had to have those gloves over his hands, and so couldn't really interact in that way. So what we did was keep everything in the box, and first we'd shake the box, doing sometimes rhythmic things, sometimes not, depending on the group. And shake, shake, shake. Have students maybe make some guesses about what might be in there. Have the poets kind of first get that auditory feedback, and then for the poets who weren't able to engage tactilely, they could still be a part of the group, still experience it. So this was our warm up for that. We didn't add anything onto the poem here because what this was hoping to accomplish was just getting used to a range of different tactile choices and a range of different sensory materials, so that for the next day, when we started thinking about the city and we wanted to build our cityscape out of all different sensory supplies, we had already introduced the idea that we were going to come in with a range of different things. It created this kind of routine, or as much of a routine as you can in 5 days. And it set it as like, all right, well, these two are going to come in and sing and be a little weird, but they've already done that. So whatever they have for us to touch is probably going to be okay. And so our city poem started with this piece, which is one that I really love to teach. It's called San Francisco. And it's just about a boy in San Francisco thinking about his relation to the city. This is one, I think Jason's walked through a workshop with me. I think I taught this with the Kennedy Center in a different context. Yeah. But I really love this piece by Francisco X. Alcone. Yeah, I'll give it a read. I'd love maybe if anyone else wanted to read it too. It's a really nice piece. So my name is Francisco, like my grandfather, and like his grandfather's grandfather. I'm so happy the city is named after St. Francis, the patron saint of all animals. Here, everybody knows how to spell my name. Like a sweet, simple little poem. Would anyone like to give it a read? Certainly no pressure.
I'll try it in Spanish, but my Spanish is great. Yo me llamo Francisco como mi abuelo y como el abuelo de su abuelo. Como me alegro que esta ciudad lleve el nombre de San Francisco, el santo patrón de los animales. Aquí mi nombre todos lo saben escribir.
Hey, thank you, Lee. I'm taking a shot in Spanish too. Yeah. So that third day, we read about the city. This has some language on it. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo from that day that I can share, so I had to share a completed one here. But I think this one does a nice job of showing the building of the neighborhoods of the cityscape of Miami itself. So we're working kind of big into small, or maybe like more universal to intimate, right? The ocean is this kind of dominant landscape piece. We interacted with the beach, kind of the next tier in. But now, as we have grown accustomed to each other, right? Like last week, thinking about building trust, building this workshop space. Now we can talk about each other's neighborhoods. Now we can think about the cities, the places in the city where we live a bit more comfortably. And we had just come in the first day, starting right away with this concept of the city. And so using different sensory materials, we created skyscrapers, palm trees, houses, and really built out these neighborhood spaces where we have the ocean as the starting really kind of collaborative piece of it. And then we're building inwards into the community. And again, the tactile work is thinking about that sensory integration work, the sensory work that we touched on last week. And also this concept, this idea for the pre-verbal poetics, right? This is a quote from Stanley Greenspan and Serena Weirder that I read last week. This idea, when a child who's eaten apples and played with them learns the word apple rather, he knows all about apples. An apple has meaning for him. It's not just a dictionary definition that says it's round and red. So the word becomes a label for what a child already knows based on the interactions he has with the word, right? And so if our theme is Miami, along with the lived experiences of the poets who live in Miami, I also want to start creating as many opportunities to interact with the words we're going to use before we use them. So as we think about adding language, again, we want to connect the words that are going to be used to lived experiences in the community and in the classroom, right? Some of those lived experiences might be, like I mentioned, the observation of the ocean on the bus ride, right? We knew as facilitators coming in that the bus route always passed on this bridge. So the ocean was this constant part of the routine of these students. And we're also creating opportunities to interact with things in the classroom, right? Like the beach objects that we brought in, and then later, like the city objects that we brought in, right? Popsicle sticks aren't quite the same as wood, but we wanted to create things that were similar to what building materials might be like. So that when it came time to add language, we had interacted as richly as possible with the words. And so here is our approach to adding language. You can see here we have the finished visual work, we have the ocean, we have this group's kind of cityscape put together with a lot of really lovely pipe cleaners. And then the words were laid out on the table, printed nice and big. There are some left blank so that if poets or if teachers in the space also had ideas, we could write them in on the spot. And then the space on the table gave us an opportunity to move them around as needed for different poets' visual fields. We could pick them up, we could interact with them. Poets could interact with them, could reach out and grab. We just dedicated the whole table to it, right? This is a workshop, this is a visual poem, so let's take up a whole art table space. You can see too, there's some sand. I think maybe for this group, we brought in some more beach supplies on the day of the word. It certainly looks that way, unless someone else brought in sand. Don't totally recall. And so where do words come from? Right, and thinking about adding the language to a visual poem, one rule of thumb I like to have is presume competence, then work backwards, right? Presuming competence in all spaces is something really central to my work, and I think it's a good starting ground, but sometimes you do need to work backwards and scaffold. So the first thought is student developed words, right? That thought of intentionality. One way I like to do that is one, writing the day of, but also for longer projects, keeping kind of word bank or like a word wall throughout the project, right? So when I work with, right now, for example, I'm working with neurotypical general education, 2nd and 3rd grade classes in a public school here in New York. And at that age, developmentally, the poets really love to just like word vomit. We'll be talking about an idea, they'll be like, oh, I remember this thing, right? And so all these things happen. It's pretty exciting. We're doing exciting work. So keeping a little word bank, it might just be like a poster. If I'm working virtually, it might be a separate Google Doc or Google Jamboard, just a space where students and the poets in the space take ownership too, be like, that's a really wonderful idea, right? So as we think about ours, right, if Jason, as we're thinking about tunes, is like, oh, I learned all about bass clefs and treble clefs the other day and really wants to talk about that. It's a nice moment to be like, whoa, Jason, those are wonderful, delicious details. Can you add them to our word bank? We're going to want to use those later, you know? And so as this process is happening and as each stage of the process invites like new and exciting vocabulary, you can start building this collaborative word wall, this collaborative word bank to then reflect on when it's time to add the language. Another thought is sight words or classroom vocabulary, you know, whatever you're already working on, how can it fit into the project that's happening? Then a final source can be words from mentor texts or the poems you're reading. You can kind of cut those up found poem style, right? You can either type them up later yourself if you need them to be larger, thinking about visual needs, or you know, the poets in the space can cut up words, lines they really like from the poems that you're reading. And in that way too, we're thinking about comprehension a bit here, right? We're connecting back to those sources. So I want to look at just a few finished products with y'all. Show you guys a sneak peek of the one with all the houses. This is the one I talked about last time with the feathers. This was that scenario. And so, yeah, I'd love to open the floor for comments too. you notice anything particularly interesting, if anything catches your eye, please take the time to shout it out, or any questions as well. But as that happens, we have all our feathers. Also in this space, I forgot for that scenario, but there was one poet who really loved dot paint. And so Raquel and I didn't bring dot paint, but that was another thing that the class suggested. I was like, yeah, I love dot paint. And the poet clearly did too, like went off. So we had this wonderful polka dot map here, which honestly, something about it reads is very Miami to me. I've worked very closely with this organization, so I'm a bit familiar with Miami. Raquel is from Miami. And yeah, something about it is just like very vibrant in the way the city is. And then we have birds here, right? So we added feathers as our tactile piece. We added the feathers as that tactile piece because that was what we had, but birds was the passion, right? Birds was the one thing. So that was the actual language that we added into the poem. And then we have as another finished product. This is the one that I think was in the picture with the table that you all saw. So here we have our pipe cleaners, right? The buildings take on a much more abstract shape here. The one thing that I really love, well, maybe I'll wait. There are a few things I really love about here, but let's sit with it. And I want to see if anyone finds it. There's one thing here.
I love the waves.
Yeah, you got it.
That fabric that sticks up. That's great.
Yeah, Lee found it. This is the one thing that I always love to talk about with this piece. This three-dimensional aspect of the wave, that blew my mind. It's like such an easy thing to do, right? Like it just felt. Why not bend the felt? But when it happened, I was like, oh, well, that's just genius. I'm done here. I'm gonna go. And then also the wave here repeats a bit more subtly. But thinking about imitation, I think another poet saw that idea. We have it gets cut off, but we have this kind of wavy, gradual felt work here, right? But yeah, and then the labeling of it. I love too. Here we have sunshine labeled, which in that other one with the buildings is also labeled. Another thing too that I love personally, this was Raquel and I's like personal mission. So when we were down there, this was a few years ago. So it was Dwayne Wade's last season with the Heat. And so as part of the words that we were bringing in as just like possible exciting words, we added Dwayne Wade, D Wade, and we're very much hoping that a classroom would add it. And this was the only classroom that added it. So I do love showing that. But we see here some other examples of written words, right? Things are ideated day of that fit in here, but we're just kind of student ideas like doors. Love that. Traffic and doors. There's must be on the last one. Let's go back to it. It's a good one. Here we see that sun again. I love this one has expressways. There's something really wonderfully purposeful to expressways leading right into the building that I very much like. And we have high rises here as well, kind of labeling this.
I like the 3D nature, Donnie, of that one, that last one that you showed us with the pipe cleaners coming up off of the sticks.
Yeah.
Coming out, the stereo image of it coming out from the flat surface is pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that too. That was done without really a ton of explanation. I like to think, personally, it's hard to know. I like to think of it as like the airplane towers or like lightning rods at the top of skyscrapers. That's how I read that. But that's my own interpretation. It's hard to get confirmation, but yeah, absolutely. That 3D work is really nice. I like too thinking about perspective work in the different classes. Like here we have sunshine and the sun is centered as if you're like looking through. Then the other class that labeled sunshine has it in the corner as if it's the corner out. So I love that both these groups thought to add the sun and thought to add the sun as the crumpled tissue paper, get that kind of perspective, but placed it in different spots for like a pretty similar idea. Cool. And it's just a little reminder. I feel like I mentioned, that this is an example of something that was condensed into a week, right? So last time talked a lot about how much time it can take and the importance of the process. And it is really important, right? I went into this residency talking to the organizers, talking to the administration of the school, being like, this is what I do, this is how I do it. I think we'll have products by the end, but I'm not making any promises. And so we're an organization, we're down with the idea, which is great, and went in with that and still ended up with these really beautiful finished products, right? So this kind of work is possible to condense in the span of a week. And I think especially if like at this point in the year, if you all have really tight relationships with the students and the classes that you're teaching, then certainly you can. But still, even in that time frame, right? That slow growth, that slow process is really key to getting cool pieces. All right, speaking of cool pieces, so the last time we met, after we met, I was like, I wonder what would happen if I put everyone's gifts together. So I did it and created this wonderful piece of visual art. I really love that there is almost like something happening here. Like this is really calming to me, this whole left side. We have like Grommet reading, we have this wonderful river scene. Even this is all kind of slow. And then as we go to the right, it just gets like wonderfully, like colorfully manic. And so this is a bit of what we're going to build on. What I'd like for us to do is to get visual. So let's draw a picture of the detail that you shared with the All About Me. And if you feel a bit stuck, don't worry. Happens to all artists. I'm going to go back to that meme page with everyone's memes together or GIFs together. So that way you can pull inspiration from the GIF you found, right? Took some time, we had some fun, and those GIFs are full of images. There's a lot going on in them. So if you get a little stuck, just draw something in your GIF. It will take about 5 minutes-ish. We're moving at a good pace, maybe a bit longer. Do this. So just kind of a sketch. Yeah. We'll get going on that. I'll go back to our GIF page. It's a lot of visual overload. So once I see everyone's kind of working, I'll maybe move off it. But we'll keep it here in case anyone needs that bit of support. And I think I'm going to leave my second camera off after our little glitch, but I'm going to move my operation so that I can do some work with you all too. Oh man, I'm very like directly in a light here. You're like very spectral. Actually, I'll take about 5 minutes. Cool. It's time check. It's got about 2 more minutes to finish up our sketches, our drawings for now. 2 more minutes. All right, y'all, last minute to finish up where you're at. Gonna all right. Go ahead and come to a close. I'd love to take a moment, and if you would, we'll just one at a time share what we did. I'll go ahead and start us off. So, I gotta turn off my blur. Give me just a moment. So, I, perhaps unsurprisingly, did a book for my love of reading. I did, sorry, I got some glare on the white. I did this corner here because I'm the kind of monster who likes to dog ear books as I'm reading. So I wanted to add this little bit of like darkness there to kind of represent that. So yeah, that's my piece for now. Lee, you're next in the way our poem is currently ordered. You hold it up and tell us about it. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Unmuting with one hand while holding notebook. I did a drawing of my cast. Oops.
No, yeah, that looks good.
There you go. Can you see it?
Yeah.
And I can put the real one up. Ah!
Nice. Yeah, the inspiration right there. I love it, Lee. Thank you.
Exactly.
Kristen, you wouldn't mind? Oh my goodness. You got the color in there too already? Wow.
So I love sports in general, but recently and over COVID, just being home, we tried to, we have 2 young kids too. We said, what can we do that's still active and we can get outside and just still be together? And we learned how to play disc golf, and none of us are really that good except the youngest, the 10-year-old, of course. But it gives us a chance to be outside, enjoy what Maine has to offer, and just have fun as a family. So it's been our new hobby.
Amazing. Love that. You had Elvis with the disc golf in your gift too. So what a find. Did you search sports or did you search disc golf? Disc golf? Yeah? Okay. So I got a little specific. Nice. It would have been wonderful if you'd done sports and found that. Jillian, if you would.
Okay, we'll see if this stays stuck. Because I didn't have tape, so I was like, let's use nail polish.
Oh boy, I love that.
Okay, so typewriter with bubble wrap for keys, cat, lake that I have right outside my window and kind of desk. So
beautiful. Thank you. All right, we don't have Paula with us today. Jason, do you have some tunes for us? Oh, nice. So you listening to some tunes on the radio?
There, I had to find the cursor again for the unmute button. Yeah, so I got a great new radio for our place at the lake last summer, and I really just I figured out that even though we have TV at the lake, and I just said, I just want to sit and listen to music. And so I got a really great radio, so I sort of tried to replicate that a little bit, but this is me just chilling. Amazing. Chilling like a villain, listening to my tunes, you know? Good stuff.
All right, we don't have Anne-Marie with us either. Moving along, Ruth.
I have laryngitis, so I really can't talk.
Oh.
This is just a start, like a jar to like start putting things into it. Sorry, I can't talk.
No, thank you for still being here. Thank you for sharing still, too. I love that mason jar. You have a nice sense of perspective in there. That's something I always try to work on. Kaylee?
So my word was coffee, but it's like, late at night, you have coffee, spurs of creativity, rainbow magic. And here we are.
Nice. I love some rainbow magic coffee.
Right?
Yeah. I don't believe we don't have Jean. So Kathy.
I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
I just had a play upon what my students have been doing, my younger students, and it was just still on my mind, and their map building and sort of creativity and the parallel between them being newcomers and sort of what they picked to put in the map was really interesting to me.
Amazing.
Thank you. That.
Yeah. I love that you've been really running with this Area 51. We just like tossed it in there and now in deep.
It's not usually a thing I'm really into, but it just was so funny when I saw that from a second and first grader. It just really caught my imagination. But
yeah. All right. I think Alexis and then Tanya.
Mine was Lexi likes painting, so I just drew my desk with my light on, painting, and my cat's usually there judging my work and threatening to push over my water cup. So that's usually what I'm doing to de-stress and things like that.
Right. I love that. I love too, you had the Aristocats, the cat painter.
Yeah,
right?
the cat was part of it, but it wasn't part of the poem we created. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, Tanya, if you close us out.
Sure. Yeah, so I've got a bowl with my bread and my rolling pin to roll it out, and this all looked way too neat. And I didn't think that flour all over the place would show up. Got a broken egg. My kitchen always, it never looks this like this looks neat, even with a broken egg. So
very cool. Yeah, you had the flour everywhere in your gift too.
Yeah.
Very. All right, y'all. Thank you. Beautiful pieces. We're gonna circle back and finish them out, and then we're gonna try something that I haven't tried before to make a visual poem with y'all. And I think it'll work out pretty cool and maybe honestly pretty cute if we can pull it off. So we'll see. But we have a bit more to do. So I want to walk you all through another case study. This one is the longer ones. This one I did over the course of a semester. Is with elementary and middle school classes, again in self-contained settings. So I was working primarily with nonverbal poets with limited mobility. Most of them were non-ambulatory, but some had a wider range. And this is something I facilitated in a hybrid model. So I was virtual, teachers and paras were in the classroom, and with the organization I was working through, I had supplies sent to the classroom so that some tactile work could be happening while I was facilitating. It was honestly a pretty wild experience. It was pretty awesome, but I also felt like the man behind the curtain, like I was just up on the smartboard screen and I don't know, it was interesting. So this started with the All About Me poem, like ours did. Instead of just being kind of like an introductory or icebreaker, our word was passions. And so we were thinking about this concept of, what is a passion? And we spent about a month on our All About Me poem. We built it out with the students. We had them choose visuals, the way you all chose visuals. This is probably most closely related to the project that we're working on right now. There are other aspects of it as well. I mentioned last time for the hybrid model, the poets in the space chose colors. So every time we go through their slide during the poem, there'd be that visual cue. There's more visual work, more like personal work around helping students kind of identify themselves and reflect on their own photos and their own passions. They all about me. But then thinking about the word passions and what it contains, right? Passion is also a really strong feeling. So we segued that into thinking about feelings, choosing happy, mad, excited, and sad, right? Happy, mad, and sad are all pretty standard, for lack of a better word. Then excited is this one that had a bit of nuance to it. And so to help with the rhythm work, to help get everyone ready, I made up this little feeling song, which in the interest of time, I think I'm going to mainly just walk through. So I'll spare y'all. But I do want to make a note here, say that the resources I shared with you in that Google Drive, there are lesson plans tied directly to the end of this. And then with those lesson plans coupled with all these slides, the feeling song, and the subsequent part, this is a full lesson that you all are welcome to replicate or adapt or make use of however you'd like. So sharing it with y'all for y'all to have. So the feeling song, thinking again about predictable routines, settling in and not starting too big. The first feeling was happy and started with, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, right? Something that most students are going to know, nice and familiar. And thinking about the movement, we would just clap your hands. A pretty standard movement, one that we've done in our collaborative work, both our collaborative work and this classroom at that point with All About Me work. We've been clapping. We've been doing iterations of it. So it was a nice place to start. The next feeling was mad, which if you're mad and you know it, take a deep breath. And that movement was crossing your arms. And if you're mad and you know it, take a deep breath. Right? So then we worked on excited, which was, if you're excited and you know it, move around. And that was kind of free form. Students are welcome to move, wave their arms, rock in their chairs, do their thing, move around a little bit. Then finally we had sad, which the movement for sad was, if you're sad and you know it, let it out. Ooh, ooh, right? And finally, of course, do them all, which is a pretty wild thing to then deep breath, you move around, and then you let it out. Ooh, ooh, right? It's a pretty broad range of movements there. We worked on the feeling song, and then I had this chart. So this is our feelings chart, and we check in every session with how everyone was feeling. We had a song, which would just be like, how is Donnie feeling today? Feeling today, feeling today. How is Donnie feeling today? Come and let us know. And then here, I started unhappy, whoops. So the names would be over here. And then once the student, the poet in the space made the choice, a part of the sensory work and sensory packets I sent to the classrooms had these visuals there for poets who needed that support so they could choose. And then I would drag it over. I'm feeling pretty happy being here with you all. So the poet would let us know. And to honor that intentionality, to validate it, it'd be with the movement. So Donnie feeling happy today, happy today, happy today. Donnie's feeling happy today. Thanks for letting us know. Right, so we worked on this feeling chart, working through each poet in the space, and the song would include the movement, right? And within the routine, there's a lot of room to be flexible, to adapt, right? If someone's feeling mad or sad, you're not necessarily going to want to sing with the most positive affect, right? That might be more soothing affect, right? Like thanks for telling me you're feeling mad, Tanya. Sorry, Tanya, you don't look mad, but you're next to me on Zoom. Thanks for telling us you're feeling mad. So to Tanya, we can ask if she wants to sing to her. And if yes, like Tanya's feeling mad today, mad today, mad today, right? So we did that work. And then we started thinking about color. So this is where the visual art piece got in. We had done all this collaborative work. And so we ascribed yellow and excited with happy. We'd done some work thinking about, if they should be the same. We kind of thought about feeling upset or feeling dysregulated as being more mad, and excited is just like its own variation on something joyful, right? And when you're excited, you are kind of happy, but it's like a different kind of happy. It's like a more like bodily, physical sense of happy. Sad was, of course, blue. There's a lot of wonderful like mentor texts, mentor music, getting into blues there that you can play on, that we played on. And as I said, yellow for excited and happy. And so again, coming back to this definition of visual poetry, thinking about it, something that's always compelling the reader forward into the transformative power of language. We have that core word, passion. We have these 4 feelings we've been explaining and working through. We've been working through them with rhythm and song. We've been working on that auditory sense. We've been working visually, right? There's the chart, there's the actual visuals, there's the color work that's being introduced. Also, as a note, I have done this in person before, and then I like to actually have a chart and have students like stand up and move and get some movement in and actually like move their name or their picture. And there's the kinesthetic work that again comes from that movement. It also comes from the movements in the song. And one thing that's very purposeful in the song is that the motor planning gets more complex with each movement, right? Not only is it a part of the routine that we've been clapping, but clapping, right? You're taking here, your 2 sides of your body, thinking about that vestibular and proprioceptive system again, right? You're going from side to side, boom, and you're meeting in midline. So it's not the most complex movement. And then we have mad. It's a bit more complex, but it's still just one big full body motion. Then excited, it's kind of just a free for all. And our most complex is sad, right? To do the let it out movement, you move your hands up, and there's the auditory piece, right? Where you get a little silly, have a little fun, but also some seriousness, like ooh, ooh, right? And there's that rocking motion. So we're going from just boom, meeting in midline to moving up to a 2-step motor plan, right? A 2-step motor plan that also involves that auditory piece. So now that we had done all this work, I wanted to put these skills together and actually get abstract. So the color work moved from the chart, thinking about colors, to the today I feel. So as part of the check-in, instead of saying happy, mad, sad, we would start with colors, letting colors represent that, right? So if poets are feeling blue, then they would paint blue with these little prompts or carrier phrases. Carrier phrase is, just exactly this, right? Today I feel. One way that they're often used is thinking about reframing why questions, right? Like if I was sad, right? Instead of asking me, why are you sad? I might say, I'm sad because, just because the why, removing that why takes some of the abstract out and it like states it already and narrates it, makes it into a statement rather. So this same idea of like carrier phrasing is happening here with today I feel, then boom, you just add the color. If you're happy, you put on happy. If you're blue, you paint a bunch of blue. And so we're starting to work individually, connecting these words to these colors. And one thing I want to make note of here, and a question that I often get is thinking about timing as you put these lessons together. And like when I move on to next steps, right? I've talked about 3 different parts of this semester-long project so far. And my answer is that there is no answer. No, my answer is that it's really just about understanding when students really started mastering something, when the poets rather really started mastering something. And that to me is evidenced by moving so smoothly through a lesson that there's time left over. Kind of a trick of mine is that the goodbye song, like goodbye everybody, it can just be goodbye everybody, or it can be goodbye to each person individually. And so that way, when a session does run without much time left over, I can be like, all right, like now we're ready, right? This work of repetition, this work of routine allows so that as we introduce these more and more abstract, these more and more complex things, it becomes clear when that repetition is taking effect and when there's a mastery of what's going on. Like I said, just go slowly. And something that I think is important, so you can always go back. I feel like in spaces and education spaces especially, it's really tempting and really easy for myself included to want to always go forward, forward, forward. And when things don't work, she's like, all right, well, we'll just jump to the next thing. But backwards is also an option. It's okay when something doesn't work to go back, right? If the first time I introduced these colors, switching away from the chart, it was a total disaster. It's like, all right, well, maybe I need to meet them somewhere in the middle. Maybe we should go back to that chart. And that's still valid when thinking about the timing of this. So this is step 2.5 in terms of those 3 steps. And so finally, we came to the visual poem itself. This example is a bit of a wild one, but it's the one that I have permission to share. But I think it still shows what the finished piece should look like, right? So we have all these 3 colors, red, blue, yellow, and they were chosen in part because of the primary colors, right? And so as we talked about feelings, as we talked about our passions, those colors becoming emblematic and kind of like abstractions of our passions, the final challenge, the final part of this project was for the classes to cover a poster board in paint. And the paint would be chosen by how each student is feeling, right? So if it's a class of 12, maybe some will feel blue, some are going to feel yellow, some are going to feel red. So as everyone mixes their paint together, at some point, the red's going to meet the blue. And that allows for this moment where we can start physically seeing the way that we can hold all these different emotions, right? You don't just have to be red or blue. You can also be purple. You can be mad about something that happened on the bus, but still excited to be in school. So you can be orange, right? And so working with these primary colors, having the poets start painting and covering the poster, you can see here some of that purple happening, down here, some of the orange. This class opted to do these really big circles on different days, so it didn't quite blend. But then they came back through with some brush strokes and covered everything in. And so you see it here, and in the corners, I feel especially, you start seeing the colors blending together. And so the colors become emblematic of the way we can hold different emotions. Then we add on our passions, because these passions are the way we express all these different emotions, right? So starting from that core word passion and working outward, ended up with these really beautiful poems. This one, again, is a bit wild, but I think it's still a nice representation. These emojis were made with the students, which was a very cool project that was taken on outside of my time. There was a pair in the space who was a really great artist and went in on it with the poets. And yeah, it's pretty wild, honestly. So for our last time together, some of you already got a jump on adding color, but that's totally cool. I'd love for us to add some color onto our poems. And kind of in the vein of this, just add some color as to how you're feeling. If you already started coloring, like I said, totally cool. But let's finish the colors. Let's get a little wild with it. So you can do the red, blue, yellow, or if you're feeling more abstract, you could add some purple and tell us what your purple is. Add some teal. Tell us what your teal is. And then also, I know we got to jump on some sensory items, and this will be an opportunity to add those as well. So we'll take, again, about 5 minutes, maybe a little more for this part. I'm going to color mine with y'all. And then we're going to see if we can pull off this visual poem idea I have. I think it's going to be cool. So we'll take 5 minutes to finish coloring if you started coloring, and think about how the colors might connect to how you're feeling. And two, as we color, if anyone has any questions, any thoughts, I'm happy to color and chat as I have this massive light on me again. Oh, I do. Oh my goodness, I forgot a glue stick. Tisk, tisk. Cool. We've still got about 4 minutes. I'm going to tell you all my plan for this. My plan, I think it'll work pretty well. If we all manage to hold our work up into our cameras, I can screenshot it. Then we'll have one big visual poem of all of our work finished. That's the plan. Yeah. I think it'll be pretty cool. So take now, about 3-4 more minutes to finish up. Then we'll see if my idea works. All right, y'all, take about 2 more minutes to get us into position. Whoa, Porter. Yeah, if you're finished, you can feel free to practice, get that framing right. I'm probably gonna need to practice. Let's see. Oh, there it is. It's pretty good on my end. Can I go in? Ooh, this is the yellow. All right, one more minute, y'all. Then we're gonna try this thing out. Oh my goodness. All right. All right. Let's come to a close. If everyone would do me the honor of turning your camera on. And let's try to get ourselves in frame. Hey, this actually looks very, very great. All right. Kathy, are you ready? Ooh. Good practice, everyone. Kathy. While we're holding up, I do love all the color that I'm seeing here. I love that mason jar. Wow, those look like a little fire. Oh, they're flowers. I thought they were fireflies. It's really beautiful. We got the neat, messy kitchen. We got the cast, the forest. It's framed, ready for frisbee. Beautiful typewriter. I love the bubble wrap, Jillian too. Alexis, that studio looks great. Kaylee, that rainbow coffee. Still really want it. Yeah, Kathy.
All right. I had to find paints, believe it or not.
Yeah.
All I ever do is clean up stuff, but I couldn't find anything.
All right, let's
But
get all those work in the frame. Ready? Let's 3, 2. Oh, I messed it up. 3, 2, 1. All right. Give me just a moment. And while I am working on this, I will bring us back to close out the presentation. So we added our color. This is the slide where our picture is going to be in just a moment. But some next steps for what this would be is to decide on an order as a group, right? So decide, right now we're just doing it by Zoom, but if we were in person, if we were in a virtual space, decide like our order, decide on a title. We might want to develop a rhythm if we're reading it, if it's just visual, decide how we want to curate it, and then, practice and perform how we're going to show it off. One thing I did want to mention here with this photo, I know we have a lot of like high school teachers in the house, so I wanted to shout out a way that I might play with rhythm. You can see this All About Me poem behind us. So the work of this group, this was a transitions group I worked with, was to build our own instruments, right? So that was the rhythm work there. So that way we could have some shakers. This is an actual drum, but we would build drums. And so the rhythm work there, right? The sing-songy stuff wouldn't quite be chronologically respectful. So coming up with a way to introduce rhythm to this like 18 to 21-year-old group was building our own instruments to then kind of create our own beat, create our own rhythm. And this is the point where we celebrate the work, right? Whether it's a screenshot, whether it's a reading, or whether it's some like curated event, celebrating the work is a pretty important third anchor point to making visual poetry, right? Thinking back to all we talked about, the pre-verbal work, the like collaborative work, and we want to honor all the effort that's gone into it, all the language work that's gone into it, and really celebrate it. So we have our goodbye song, which I think I'll sing just one time round, and then I'm going to work on this photo while we open it up to some quick questions. So just really fast, you can clap for a snap that goes goodbye. Everybody, goodbye. Everybody, goodbye. Everybody, we're glad you came today. All right, everybody, goodbye. I am very glad you came today. These are 3 steps, 3 kind of anchor points to a lesson. Again, and please do keep in touch. If you have a minute, I'm gonna crop that photo and then I'll share it with us. But you're gonna have these slides with the finished photo of our group visual poem in it. This is my website, my email, my Instagram. Please keep in touch if you do work on any of these projects. If you do use this feelings lesson plan, give me a shout out. Let me know. Happy to help and always happy to see what people do with this work. It's always very exciting. So I'm going to work on this poem in just a minute.
That's awesome, Donnie. Thank you so much for spending time with us today and last time and in the previous series. It's been a great pleasure and an honor to work with you. And like Donnie said, he's interested in staying connected with you as you do this work with your students. And as I put in the chat too, the department is super excited to be showcasing and highlighting the work that you're doing. We see this as one of many varieties of innovative practices that we're looking for you all to engage in your classrooms with your students. So as you work on projects with your students and you decide that you want to share any or all of that with us, the department is so excited to be able to put that out there for the rest of the state and for the world to see. I put my email in the chat, so I would love to connect with you if you do have some of those projects later on that you would love to share. I also put a link to the department's YouTube channel, which is where you'll find the recordings for all of these sessions, plus a whole variety of other things that the department has offered for professional learning that you may think at surface value doesn't apply to you, but we really encourage you to explore the options that we have, because you may find some things out there about digital learning or other topics that you may not realize could have a positive impact on you and your work with students. So that's why we put everything that we do for professional learning up on that channel on YouTube so that you can have access to it later on. I will email all of you a link to collect your professional learning certificate for contact hours through the department. And I'm going to do that right after this session is done. So you should see that email within the next 20 minutes or so, depending on my dog to stop digging a hole in his bed and making a distraction. I'm almost done, Bob. You just wait, okay?
While the distraction's
and
happening.
yeah, I don't want to capitalize on all the time. We are at our time, but if anybody has any questions, oh, there's our project. That's great. Lee, do you want to throw something in?
Yeah.
Huh?
Or anybody, if anybody's got any questions or feedback or whatever, fire away.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you. And I am, I don't know how to phrase this appropriately, but I really loved it. I was really engaged, and I'm always been a high school teacher, and I love little kids, but I don't ever work with them. And so I am one of those people that has an aversion when I start hearing, hello, everybody. I'm like, oh God, we're going to get in a circle and I'm going to hate it. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it was very easy for me, like my head's turning all the time, how I could turn this into something that my, a serious high school poetry class or a one-on-one poet that I'm working with might be able to do with the visual stuff. So thank you.
Hey, yeah, for sure. And again, I'm going to email Jason that Google Drive link. It was in the chat, but I want to make sure everyone has it. So that is resources if you all want to go deeper down the rabbit hole of this stuff as the lesson plan for this feeling thing. So yeah, thank you all so much for your time, for staying overtime a little bit. And thank you all for engaging. It's only as engaging as the people who are here to engage. So I appreciate you all being down to play.
Absolutely, that's awesome. And yeah, I encourage everybody to scroll back up to the top of the chat at 4:38 is when Donnie put that link in with that Google Drive. So I encourage you to snag that now, and then you can bookmark it in your browser and you'll have it to access later. Yeah, thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Donnie, for being here to present to us and offer your expertise and your support and your guidance in this. And I thank everybody, like Donnie said, for being here, and be on the lookout for that PD certificate. And I look forward to seeing you all in the future and seeing the projects that you do with your students. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody. And if I don't see you before the upcoming break, I wish you a well-deserved break in April coming up very, very soon. So hang on, everybody. You can make it. I know you can. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Take care. Thank y'all.